It's okay to be afraid. It's a normal, natural experience and expression. Um, and it doesn't change anything. The most helpful thing you can do for yourself and your partner is to actually accept what's happening and understand what's happening so that you can deal with what's happening, because ignoring it is not a good idea.
Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Seamus Ford and you're attending another Landmark Difference Makers interview. And today we're going to be interviewing Arnie Bigbee and Barbara La Valleur. Arnie is a retired administrator at the Mayo Clinic who has recently been diagnosed with memory loss. In addition to his professional career, Arnie has been an active and award-winning volunteer and community leader for decades. As he enters the life-changing experience of progressive memory loss, he's committed to supporting families and individuals in dealing with the diagnosis of memory loss with power and peace of mind. And he's joined by his wife, Barbara La Valleur, who's here to share her experience of supporting Arnie through this journey. I really welcome both of you. Thank you for being here.
Good to
Our
be here.
pleasure.
Yeah.
Where I want to start is just with really a remarkable list of accomplishments as volunteers and community activists and concerned citizens. And Arnie, can you tell us a little bit about what your volunteer involvement has been over the years?
Sure, happy to do that. I'll try to keep it brief. I was really fortunate. Started my career at the University of Minnesota. Tried teaching junior high school for a few years. I wasn't enjoying that very much. Took a full-time position where I was moonlighting at a bank. And after a few years there, had an offer from Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. And I spent 32 years there. And the beautiful thing about Mayo Clinic is that when they had administrators, they made sure that they were engaged with the community so that when we were out in the community and volunteering, Mayo was well represented and people looked fondly on that. So I had a lot of opportunity to do that in different organizations. And it just got to be a habit. I spent 3 years as a member of the Rochester, Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. And then had a lot of positions in different nonprofit organizations and just a wide variety. And it was just a great experience for me. I enjoyed it. I'm known sometimes for being gregarious, not so much anymore at the age of 81, but you do slow down a bit.
And Barbara, you've had a varied career yourself. What do you want to share with us about that?
Well, I think the probably the most interesting thing was that I had the opportunity to spend 20 years in Europe, where I lived, was married and had 2 children. But I also had the opportunity to freelance full-time for 7 German newspapers. When I first went to Germany, I didn't speak any German at all. So I learned through my children when they were 2 and 3, or well, actually 3 and 4, when they started kindergarten and they started speaking German, and I couldn't necessarily understand them. So, I would spend a half an hour looking up the vegetables in the German American dictionary so that I knew how to pronounce it, and they would laugh at my pronunciation. And that's how I learned my German, through my children. But yeah, that was probably the most interesting part of my career. And I've had a great life.
One of the things that I read as of more recently is that you've been very active in advocating for affordable housing.
Mm.
And if I'm not mistaken, that's one of the awards that you won is for your advocacy in that area.
It is. And, when I was a child, when I was 5 years old, 9 years old, I can remember watching my mother cry as our landlord announced that he was evicting us from a home we rented from him. He had tears in his eyes. It was 1952, and my mother wasn't able to pay the rent because my father, who had not yet divorced her, had left town with another woman. So she didn't have a job, and so we fortunately ended up in the public housing projects in Southeast Minneapolis. They were just opened by the federal government. And the nice thing was that my mother was able to find a job. I did well in school and graduated from high school with honors and got a $300 scholarship to the University of Minnesota, which paid for my first year there.
Yeah.
And that was a great start. And I was working part-time, starting, with my paper out and then part-time jobs when I was in high school and while I was at the university. And it just enabled me to make progress and complete my degree, teach high school for a while, didn't like it, transferred to other positions and other jobs in different places. A little time at Honeywell, and then a job at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. And not only did they give me a great job and a great career to pursue, but Mayo expected employees to help them give back to the community, because the clinic really, the patients that came from all over were really doing a lot just by coming there and providing all of us with occupations and a challenge for us to provide the medical care they needed. So I just had a chance to get engaged in a lot of different organizations, serve on the Chamber of Commerce board for a few years, and work with other groups, different interests around the city.
Well, the thing I really want to get right into now is, you've been diagnosed with progressive memory loss. And here you both are, very active, dedicated citizens and community members. And what was it like to deal with that diagnosis when it was made clear?
Well, from my perspective, it's an unwanted reality, and there's nothing you can do to change it. It's true, and I was experiencing very minor symptoms, and I think the medical community picked up more symptoms than I was displaying, and made that analysis. First, when I was at when I was at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and then later, just by a year or so, at the University of Minnesota. So it was early stage at that point, but it's pretty well confirmed now. And I think from my perspective, knowing and I think just having been around that medical profession that long, they're making strides in working towards not a cure, but in managing it. And from my perspective, anything I can do to be somewhat of a poster child, to remain active, to not become a poor me example of what happens to people. I'm not going to, pull the drapes and disappear. So I've been very vocal about it. I'm privileged in that regard because I'm retired. A person who is less than age 65 and still employed, they don't want to risk telling that to their boss because it may jeopardize their profession, their employment. Hmm. So I have the privilege of being able to do that. And if I'm a poster child for people who have memory loss, that'd be just great. I think for the most part, I'm pretty rational. I can communicate well, but I forget things. And I've voluntarily decided I will not drive, even though I have a valid driver's license. It's pretty well known that you're at higher risk of having an accident when you've got that kind of a deficit in your awareness of your surroundings and your memory. So that's a big adjustment for me. You know, my biggest hobby when I was working was owning a 1984 Corvette, which was my weekend toy. And I put 100,000 miles on that puppy and loved it. And I can't drive anymore. I can't drive anymore because I won't let myself drive anymore. I'd be a hazard to other people.
If I could just make a comment here, Seamus. So Arnie was, we were both having our medical care through Mayo Clinic. But when his Alzheimer's diagnosis came in June of this year, first of all, it had been memory loss through Mayo Clinic.
Last year.
No, the diagnosis for Alzheimer's was June of this year. And then we changed all our medical to the town where we live, which is a suburb of Minneapolis called Edina. So yeah.
Well, Arnie, I'm going to ask you a question in a moment about, you know, being vocal about it. But before that, Barbara, what was it like for you?
Really big changes. And the early last year, when it was just early short-term memory loss, it wasn't so noticeable, but it's been very different the last 6 months. I'm incredibly proud that Arnie didn't fight about not being able to drive. He had medical advice and he took it, and I was very proud of that. He loves driving. Well, I'm now driving, doing all the driving, and I'm not, it's not bad, it's just different. So there's a lot of things that have changed. I do all the, shopping. He comes with me, but I'm doing the shopping. I'm doing most of the cooking, although I'll tell you about something earlier this evening in a minute. I do all the finances and the medical appointments and all of that, and that has had an impact on my on stress. I've had a lot of stress. However, I've also been proactive in well, first of all, I share what's going on with my family, who have been incredibly supportive, with Arnie's family, who is amazingly supportive, and friends, and some of whom are here with us tonight. But I think that, and I also did a care partner support 6-week course through Mayo Clinic. And I did a dementia training as well. So I'm trying to learn as much as I can, because every day is different. Every day is new, and I'm becoming more patient, believe it or not. For those who know me, it's a challenge. It's absolutely a challenge, and I'm unwilling to do as Arnie mentioned, the woe is me thing, because we have a life to live, and we're going to live our lives as full out as we can, and make as much a difference as we can for as many people as we can, and for each other.
Yeah.
So, but let me tell you about tonight, because he made chicken wild rice soup. He used to do that all the time, but he hasn't for quite some time. Tonight he did it, and I wanted to help him pour some of the vegetables into the soup. He didn't like that at all, so I just really backed off. I went back into the living room and he made his soup.
Well, but she did recover with some things, and I did forget that needed replacement. So it was a mutually beneficial thing.
Well, Arnie, the question I want to ask you is, you said that you've become very public about what you're going through, and you want to be very public about it.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned the concern that if somebody has memory loss while they're still working, that they'd be afraid to be public about it. But how has it changed the way that people relate to you?
Without being able to say I've done a survey and asked people how to do for them. From my perspective, I would just have to say it's been a positive response from people. Some people are surprised. I think especially a younger person who might feel, and especially somebody who hasn't been in a medical environment where you get used to being open about that you don't want to hide things that are of a medical nature. And it's not that you're proud of them, but it's that you're, sharing them and letting people know what you're dealing with. So I think that's just having been in those environments for me, that Mayo environment was just extremely beneficial. Other people wouldn't have had that advantage from my perspective. I think knowing how supportive Barbara is another big factor. I don't have to worry about that. And, giving up driving was the biggest challenge I had, but knowing that Barbara was willing to take that on was just fine. So that's been good.
Yeah, there's a quote by, I believe it's John Lennon. Don't quote me if I'm quoting John Lennon, but um, the quote, as I understand, is life is what happens when you're busy making other plans.
Yeah.
And the context of that quote is usually you're wasting time and the clock is ticking.
Yeah.
But I think of it with you guys because it's kind of the opposite. You are making plans and you're pursuing those plans, and then life happens.
Yeah. I want to kick off on that a little bit because I still have, cherish the idea of having a little bit of a memoir, to produce, and I still want to do that. That's something that's been a couple of years. Barbara has done hers already, and I would just like to do that. I've got a nice iMac that we're sitting in front of right now, and these machines are really great. I could sit here and dictate all day, and it would record every word. I wouldn't have to do a lot of finger, poking in the digits one by one. So that's a desire I have, and I think it's an opportunity for me to record what I'm going through, what I'm experiencing. I don't like it, but I still have a life, and we're making it work. The thing I have to deal with that is concerning me most is the tendency to have a short temper. And that's not like me. I've been a very patient person. But Barbara knows that I sometimes will just fly off and react. And it's not who I want to be for our family.
What would you say, Arnie? Let's talk about this a little bit. Your experience going through this. When you say you have a short temper and it's not like you, what's the difference now compared to before when something irritates you or you lose your temper? What's changed?
It's what used to be a natural thoughtfulness time period or approach. It's like that layer of patience is dwindled. I can't say it's gone, but it's dwindled. And I try to be aware of it, but I'm just sorry to say that there are times when I'll fly off the handle, and it's sometimes a very silly thing.
But you fly off the handle before you
Get my control.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, before I can control my reaction. So, I'm trying to be aware of that. I don't know if that will impact it over time, but I don't take a lot of medications. I have some of what I would consider to be preliminary medications. I don't have a lot of heavy personality change meds that I'm taking. So that's, from my perspective, that's a benefit, but over time, it may be that that's kind of a med that would alter that quick reaction to anger.
Well,
One of the things that we've done, because we've talked about this, the fact that Arnie's temper has I would say, shortened. And that's one of the things that's changed quite a bit in the last 6 months. And he suggested, when this happened one time a couple of weeks ago, that I say the word red light. Now, and that is supposed to trigger him to remember that he's going in a direction he doesn't want to go verbally. However, he also then said, and this shows his humor, and what we have to laugh at sometimes is, if I can remember what that red light is supposed to mean, it might be helpful. So,
Ding, ding, ding.
sometimes you just gotta laugh.
Yeah.
Well, Arnie, one of the things I want to ask you is what is it that I can't imagine that this doesn't come with some amount of fear. But what are the things that you're afraid of or worry for?
Well, I think the thing I'm worried most about, and it's not just because of the disease, it's because of old age, is the loss of mobility, the loss of choice. I've lost my ability to drive myself around in a car. That's huge for me, absolutely huge.
Yeah.
But we still get out. We still go places. We're in church on Sundays. So that's something that's still able to be there. When that's gone, when the ability to be mobile is gone, I think that will be that's a major point. And I guess if it were a physical crippling, I could understand that better. But the emotional or mental crippling will be a huge impact. And it's going to be gradual, but it will be there. Right now I can feed myself, I clothe myself. Barbara doesn't have to worry about me for the most part. So that's pretty nice. It's like, for us being retired, and we don't have any financial worries, so it's like being on vacation all the time. The food's good, nobody's worrying about our time. Bills are paid.
Yeah.
What's the problem, Arnie? Oh, you're losing your mind. Okay, next.
Well, I want to come back to your approach to all this, but Barbara, what are you afraid of?
If I'm honest, which I always am, Seamus, and you know it, I'm afraid that I might die before Arnie, and then who's going to look after him? What's going to happen to him? I am afraid that I won't be able to stand up to the rigors that is required now of all the things that I have to do, which is why we in February sold our condo and moved into an apartment. It's really great. It has a spa area with a jacuzzi and a pool and a dry sauna. And so I make sure that I take some me time, a few times a week if I can. 2-3 times it would be great. And also just last week, Arnie said, I think that you should get a massage every month. And so I was able to get, a special or whatever it's called, when I buy a year. I don't even remember how many, but it's a lot cheaper. And I said, okay, I'll have a massage every month. Thank you very much. So, we're coping with what we have in the best way we know how.
Yeah.
We also, when was it we took our vacation? Was that this
October, last month?
October. So we took a nice vacation out to the West Coast, and all planned out, and so it was really just very nice for, I don't know, 8 or 9 days. And so we're looking at another time like that, where we can take off, fly someplace, and just have this whole arrangement of experiences in some place we haven't been before, doing things we haven't done, seeing things we haven't seen before. So I think we're just going to try to continue that as long as we can and as long as I'm able.
And interestingly enough, we went on a paddleboat river cruise on the Snake and Columbia River. And so I learned that flying with someone with memory loss is different than flying with someone who doesn't have memory loss. So he needs to be in front of me instead of behind me, so I don't lose him. That's one thing. And also he doesn't always remember where to go, especially in a strange environment. You know, if we're on the third deck and we need to go to the first deck, you know, you have to make sure that he knows where he's going.
And, you know, getting on an airplane, you know, having those tickets and the passes and knowing the seat arrangement and so on, Barbara leads the way. That's the kind of detail that's hard for me to keep in memory all the time.
And it sounds like that makes a difference for you. That
dramatic change for me when we get into that environment. And of course, if you're gonna travel there and you get there and you need to go someplace, if there's a rental car, Barbara's gonna take care of that too.
Arnie, I want to ask you a question. You're going on these experiences, you know, ticking things off your bucket list, so to speak. What's it like to be having an experience that you've always wanted to have with the knowledge that at some point you're no longer going to remember the experience?
It doesn't make a difference at all to me.
How so?
I am enjoying it immensely.
In the moment.
In the moment
Yeah.
of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're here, smile, take pictures, have fun.
Well, you know, one of the things that we all strive to do, or most of us strive to do, is to be present in the moment.
Yes.
Do you think that you have an advantage right now over other people, Barney?
I think so.
Yeah, I do too.
And you know, in a way, it's kind of like you know, you can just kind of be, you can be irreverent.
Reverend?
Yeah, irreverent. I mean, you know, oh yeah, so I got mail, you know, memory loss. Okay, what's next? What are we having for dinner? You know?
Same thing we had last night because you don't remember anyway.
No, that's all right. Yeah, always a new menu. And you know, I've told Barbara in the last few days that let's start planning our next vacation.
Hmm.
So I mean, we're just in a position where we can do that, and it's just going. I think just going to keep us with enough variety of activity. I'm not an undue burden to her on those trips, I don't think.
No.
So she just does some of the things that I would otherwise be doing. I still carry the baggage, of course.
Barbara, I want to ask you the same question, just kind of from your perspective. You're taking these things off the bucket list, and at some point, you know that you won't be able to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
What's that like for you in the moment?
Well, that was one reason why I was thrilled that he suggested we take this trip. We hadn't actually been on a out-of-state vacation for 7 years. So he said, let's go first class. And he didn't have to say that twice. We went first class there and back. And that actually was extremely helpful because first on, first off makes it a whole lot easier to fly. But knowing that we were going to have this fabulous trip and that he may not even now remember a good part of it, it's okay because we enjoyed it in the moment. And one of the challenges for me is actually being in the moment every moment. Well, I'm human. I'm not in the moment every moment, but I do try very hard to be present and be with what's so. And that's been something that I've spent the last 30 years practicing.
Yeah. One of the things I think that we do when we're out in groups of people we'll talk about it. We go to a church, Westminster Presbyterian in Minneapolis, and I am very open there. I participate in the men's group activities, not the usually chore stuff they do around the church every week. That's not something I want to get engaged in, but when we have retreats and so on, I love to be there. And I always talk about what I'm dealing with. And I think it's just having more of the people that are there start sharing that same thing, because it's a common disease.
Do you think that the degree of connection that you have with other people is playing a role in the relatively slow progression of this?
I don't know, but I'm not going to change what I'm doing. So if it is helping, yay bo. If it's not, so what? It can't hurt.
I do have to jump in here, sorry,
Yeah.
but Arnie participates in what we call in the wisdom division, the social commons, the inquiries of the social commons, and he's also in a course, and he participates and engages in these inquiries that are different every day. And I hear from these people because I know most of the same people, and they say how amazing he is to have on the inquiries because he's so authentic and he shares exactly what's going on. And that happens on a weekly basis. So I know that he is making a huge difference when he is out and about.
Yeah, Barbara, you brought up the wisdom division. For people that are not familiar with Landmark, that's a series of programs that we offer, and you guys are actively participating in that part of Landmark's curriculum. But it raises a question, which is, you're dealing with a hardship, and I'm curious how your participation in Landmark is supporting you in navigating all of this.
I think it's what Barbara says. It gives me an outlet for the way I think and the way I feel. I've always been a fairly outgoing person. I'm likely, when I was in school, even in lower grades, I was raising my hand all the time. So I did well. I think that's one of the reasons I did well. And teachers seem to like that. When you raise your hand, they ask you a question, they want somebody to raise their hand. So for me, it's a very comfortable place to be out there and be talking. I think the worst thing in the world I could think of would to be ashamed of what I'm experiencing. That to have a health condition, it's like saying, "Oh, I had chicken pox. I should shoot myself, or I should be ashamed, or something." Self-recrimination of some type. It doesn't make any sense. Here's what I got. So, how's your day going?
Yeah. One of the things that I think is a common thing that people get out of participating, for example, in the Landmark Forum is just having a relationship with what's so, as opposed to what you think it should be, or
Right.
standards and ideals you have.
Exactly.
Barbara, how about you?
I think that my participation, like as I mentioned, is in the wisdom division, particularly in we have an elders wisdom course, which I particularly love because I'm 79, and people in that area are 65 on up to in their 90s, and vibrant and active, and it's so inspiring, and that gives me that certainly gives me hope. It's a lot of fun. I was the class clown of my high school. I like to have fun, and the people around these courses are like that. They like to have fun. They're up to something. They're making a difference, and it's just to me, it gives me a purpose. It gives me, gives me a purpose. That's the biggest thing, because who I am is someone who wants to serve and make a difference. And that's my outlet to serve. I read scripture at church every 3 or 4 months, and I like to do as much as I can to support people in their participation so that they have the life they want.
There are people who are watching, people who are going to be listening, that maybe are dealing with or will be dealing with, what Arnie's experiencing or what you're experiencing, Barbara. And just to start with you, Arnie, what do you want to tell somebody who may be at the early stages of this or is afraid to get the facts about the symptoms they're experiencing? Or
Got it. I would encourage them to get good professional help, first of all. And physicians, I've been blessed, physicians from the University of Minnesota, physicians from Mayo Clinic. What more can I ask? They're just, they specialize in this area. They've got some just great staff members. It's not like a small town general physician, trying to deal with people who have memory loss and provide the kind of really up-to-date care that they need on a professional basis. Not that they're incapable of doing it, it's just that the time demands are such for them that it's not possible. So I think getting the right care from the right source is huge. And from my perspective, the prescription is a positive one. If somebody is in a position where they're still working, then the need to carve out some kind of an approach with the employer of what's going to happen. What's their health plan take care of? What's the company's approach to that? Do they take that as that's their responsibility? They'll take care of you, keep you employed as long as they can. I think if I were younger and had this happen, I could still work. It might be a modified job, but I could probably still be doing some work. I'm physically fit.
Barbara, for somebody who has a partner or a spouse, I think specifically a partner or a spouse, you've been married to Arnie for 19 years. And, you may be dealing with this, or you may be thinking this is something you're going to be dealing with. What do you want to say to them?
Be real. It is a lot easier it has been a lot easier for me to accept what is happening than to fight it, because I can't change what's happening other than to support him and we have access to the best health care that anybody could want through the University of Minnesota and their healthcare system and Mayo Clinic. And mostly now it's here, like I said, at the U, or through their system. I was in a weekend, an elders weekend, a couple of months ago, and I in someone else's sharing, I saw that I married Arnie for better and better, not better and worse. And that was a real wake up for me, because when I saw that, I thought, no, that's not really true. He has been a wonderful husband. He's a great guy. He has a great sense of humor. He's been so kind and generous to me. I am and will be the best care partner that he could possibly want. And that is going to take something from me. I'm not saying that I have what it takes, but I'm willing to have what it takes, and I'm going to do my best. And it's not going to be easy, and I know that, but he deserves that, and we both deserve that because we love each other and we talk about anything and everything to each other. There's no secrets there. It's just, that's one of the reasons why we have worked together in our partnership.
There's a kind of a prolonged stages of grief that are part of this.
Yeah.
And maybe that's part of being old and getting old. But knowing that there's something that's underway that's inevitable and will take its course, I'd imagine that there's some people that, would want to be in that stage of grief called denial
Yeah.
for a while. But you've you're on the other side of denial.
You bet.
But what would you say to somebody that's afraid to know whether they're a potential caretaker or somebody going through it? What would you say to them?
Can I jump in here?
Yeah.
I would say it's okay to be afraid. It's a normal, natural experience and expression. And it doesn't change anything. The most helpful thing you can do for yourself and your partner is to actually accept what's happening and understand what's happening so that you can deal with what's happening, because ignoring it is not a good idea. It's not helpful. So that's my first thought. Sorry for jumping in there, but you know me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's, the accepting the what's so, I mean, if you lived next to the ocean and you really wanted to have, venison every day, not too smart, you ought to be eating some fish at least sometime. So reality is reality. And if, logic and common sense says you shouldn't be driving, you're putting yourself at risk, you're putting other people at risk. I mean, that's the kind of that's a pretty black and white decision for me. It's not a one I like, but it maps it out pretty well. And I think, and I've always been a happy kind of a guy, so I'm maybe that's a bit ingrained into me, but I just can't imagine what it would be like to sit around and mope about being, in memory loss.
Yeah.
And stopping living my life. I had an appointment today for a medical appointment, PT, and I was a day early. So come back tomorrow, thanks. Okay. But Barbara was unable to drive me over there. And so one of our neighbor ladies, who's about our age.
No, she's 82.
82, yeah, well, you're older than me. She's great. She drives well, and so she took me over, but she uses a walker. So, but she's a great lady, and we just have a fun time. So, I told her, I said, "Well, thanks for the ride, and we're gonna not have to wait around any place here." So we just said where we're gonna have lunch. So we went over and found a restaurant and had lunch together. Just had a great time.
Well, I have just one question before we complete our interview. We've taken to asking this of everybody that we interview. What is it that you want people to say about you when you're no longer here?
He was here as long as he could be. He was here, speaking, listening, sharing, as long as he could be. There'll be a time when that gets cut short or it's minimized or something. I don't know what that's going to look like, but until then, I'm participating.
Yeah.
Technically.
And Barbara, how about you?
I think that what I'd like to have people say about me is that she played full out.
Hmm.
Gave it my all.
Well, it's very clear that you're both playing full out in the face of circumstances that you didn't choose, and being a real demonstration of what's possible for the rest of us. And it's really a privilege to have you here. It's really just been a joy and a real gift to have this conversation with you. And I really thank you for being with us.
It's been great to be here.
Been our privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah.